Hi, welcome to tonight's session. We're looking at the GCSE. We're going to look at the homeostasis side of the topic area. So just bear with me. I am just gaining my voice back again. It's been an interesting week. If you're joining me, I am covering GCSE tonight, and then I will do some A-level a bit later on. So we're going to start with homeostasis, and we're going to look at the fact that homeostasis is this regulation. Now, the regulation of the internal conditions of cells and also of organisms. So it's important you understand that when we talk about regulation, what we're trying to do, we're trying to maintain optimum conditions. Now, Morgan, to answer your question, I'm not going to do photosynthesis tonight because I've already done a live on that. So if you check out my live from 2 weeks ago, if it's GCSE level, then that's there for you. But if you're looking for A level, if you come back later on, I will be available at 9 o'clock to help with some A level on photosynthesis if that is what you are looking for. So let's just go back to our GCSE knowledge, and let's hope that we are all still aware of what I mean by this maintaining optimum conditions. So inside our cells, we have got chemical reactions that are happening. As an organism, we have to ensure that things like our water potential is being maintained at the correct level. So to be able to do that, what we need is we need a way of controlling this, such as our blood sugar levels. So we obviously eat our food so that we are intaking sugar, and that sugar that we take in, what's going to happen is we're either going to utilize it, or what might happen is if we're not going to use it, we will store it for a later date. But if we have too much glucose, then our body will need to respond to that by storing it away, because our bloodstream is maintaining the concentration of water circulating around our body. Now, as you're doing exercise, as you're doing chemical reactions, what you'll notice is your body temperature will increase. So we always go to the energy that is released when we do exercise, but we forget that every single cell, when it does a chemical reaction, is going to either be doing exothermic reactions or endothermic reactions. So if we are releasing energy, that is going to heat our body up. If we are cooling it down, that is going to affect the chemical reactions that are occurring. So we need to make sure that we maintain this balance, this homeostasis within the body. And then we have our water levels. As I said before, this is quite closely linked to our blood sugar levels. So if you're joining me tonight on TikTok or YouTube, I'm covering GCSE level for homeostasis. And if you do have questions, please do feel free to write them in the chat. I will respond. This is live. I am doing this to help you, one, get the foundational knowledge, but two, also to prepare you for those of you who are thinking about moving on to A level next year. So let's start with those blood sugar levels then. We know that mitochondria is the site of aerobic respiration. I covered that a couple of weeks ago. And what we need to remember is we need our glucose, we need 6 lots of oxygen molecules, and what that's going to do is that is going to be reacting together within the mitochondria because it's aerobic respiration, and that will produce carbon dioxide and water. Remember your 6's: C6H12O6, 6 oxygen, 6 water molecules, 6 carbon dioxide. So if we understand that homeostasis is about maintaining this optimum condition, we know that for the temperature side of things, we need our enzymes to work at their best. So we need that enzyme action and all those cells function to be at their best so that we are able to carry on and survive as best we can. So one of the things for you to remember when we're looking at GCSE is a lot of students, as I said last week, forget that although the enzyme is a biological catalyst, that it's going to lower the activation energy, what you tend to forget is that the temperature is going to limit the rate of a reaction. So if I increase temperature, I'm going to increase kinetic energy. If I increase kinetic energy, I've got more frequent collisions, I get a faster rate of reaction. So what I tend to do whenever I talk about this with my students is I always say to them, think about this. If one hand is the enzyme and one hand is the substrate, what's going to happen is as they are slowly coming together, they will collide. So as I increase the temperature, what I'm going to get is an increase in the collisions that are going to happen. So if I'm increasing the temperature, I'm increasing the kinetic energy, I'm increasing the kinetic energy, so therefore I'm increasing the collisions, I'm therefore increasing the faster rate until the point at which it's getting really, really hot, but then it changes. The enzyme has changed shape. If the enzyme has changed its shape, if its active site is no longer complementary to the substrate, whatever that substrate is that it is going to be working on, then it's still going to be colliding really quickly. However, it's not the right shape for the reaction to happen. Nearly no, this isn't A level. This is the foundational skills for GCSE. I am doing these lives now to help those of you who maybe don't have that foundational knowledge. I will go live for A level at 9 o'clock tonight, so do come back and join me if you're looking for A level, but it's not going to harm you because a lot of A level is about taking this GCSE knowledge to that next level. So everything I'm saying right now is pretty much the same. The only problem is when students at A level give GCSE answers. So when I increase the kinetic energy, when I've got more successful collisions, I've got a faster rate. If I've denatured that enzyme, that is therefore no longer going to be able to function. So that denaturation, I've increased vibrations within the enzyme, changing the active site shape. It's no longer complementary to the substrate. If it's no longer complementary, the rate of reaction is going to drop down. So I need to ensure that I maintain the internal environment for temperature at an optimum or as close to the optimum as I can, so that I'm not too low, chemical reactions aren't happening fast enough, and not too high that I am not actually having the rate of reaction happen because I've denatured the enzyme. So many of you jump to that top end, and the exams always look for your knowledge of the range, so do be aware of that. The other thing we talked about is water. So you know that osmosis is this diffusion of water from a dilute solution to a concentrated solution through a partially permeable membrane. So again, it's all about bringing in these key definitions and repetition. So if you want my lesson on osmosis, do check out a couple of weeks ago when I did a lesson specifically covering that. But just as a quick recap, one of the things that's important is we need to maintain our water content in our body to a set level. So not too low, not too high. And the reason being is so that our erythrocytes, our red blood cells at GCSE level, our red blood cells are able to function as they should do. So your red blood cells are differentiated so that they have got their biconcave shape. They are able to transport oxygen because they carry hemoglobin. Well, if too much water enters through the cell membrane by osmosis, that's going to cause the cell to swell up. And if that cell swells up, we've now decreased the surface area, and we could even get to the point where it bursts. And that's a big problem. If we don't have enough water in our bloodstream, what's going to happen is water will leave the cell. And if water's leaving the cell, that is going to result in the cell membrane coming closer together. There's not going to be as much space for chemical reactions to occur. That's a problem as well. So we want to keep the cells in their solution, which is known as their isotonic solution, where the net movement is that there is no net movement. For every one that's going out of a cell, one is also coming in. So our body responds to our concentration of solutes by constantly monitoring that. But how does it do? And that's what I want to look at today. Because homeostasis is this regulation of the internal environment. There's small fluctuations up and down, but we're going to keep it within a really narrow range. So when we look at how do we detect this, we need to understand that there are receptors. Now these receptors are cells that are going to detect the changes in the environment, which are known as your stimuli. So stimuli, plural, stimulus, singular. Coordination centers. So we have things like our brain, our spinal cord. For those of you who go on to do A level, you're going to learn about the pancreas. Oh, what's the background sound is irritating? Oh, I wonder what the background sound is that you can hear. I am not aware of any background sound. Can you give me an idea of what the background sound is? I'm not entirely sure what's happened, so I do apologise if it is annoying. I will have a look into that to see what's going on and how I can fix it for next time. But thank you for the feedback. I do appreciate feedback because I want these sessions to be useful for you. Okay, going back to what I was just talking about. And as you can see, I am going live. This is not me doing a recording. So if you do have questions, if you do have comments, please do let me know. It's like a buzz. How interesting. How interesting, how interesting, how interesting. Let me think. I'm not sure if this will work because sometimes it doesn't actually connect because I'm using my board. Although actually, no, I'm not using my board. That's okay. I appreciate you actually watching and giving feedback because it allows me to try to improve these sessions to make them more useful for students. But if you bear with me, I will try and see if I can figure out a way to make this better. Question is, do I have a wire here that I can use? I have so many different things going on in this room. It's like, do I actually have a wire that is what I need, or is it in the house? And if it's in the house, it means I'm not going to be able to do what I was trying to do. Ooh, we might be in luck. Bear with me. If you are joining me, I'm hoping this is going to work. I don't know if this will actually work. Might not. Can you still hear me? This is one of the checks I need to quickly. I can hear you pretty well. You can hear me pretty well, but there's lots of sound in the background. Is that any better? 1 second, let me just see if I can see what the input is. If I go for Are you still hearing the buzzing right now? Because that is really helpful. So, audio check. Audio. Is this GCSE? Yes, it is GCSE. I'm going to go live for A level later on. Hold on, I'm just trying to see if I can figure out. Has that helped at all with the sound? Yes, leave that. Nope. So it's okay. Actually, we can hear you pretty well. Okay. I will have a look and see what I can do with regards to the sound for next time. I apologize that it is a bit buzzy for you, and I will see what I can do. But it's good to... Oh, hold on, you said it's good now, and I just pulled out. Is that still good? Can you hear that better? Right, I'm going to keep going, and hopefully you can still hear me, and it's still working, and it's sounding a bit better now, but we'll see. So going back to homeostasis, we've got this internal regulation between this really small, narrow range. So we need something to detect the change. We need something to coordinate that. So that's things like your brain, your spinal cord. And as I was saying, for those of you who are A level, you'll be learning about your pancreas with regards to insulin and glucagon. For GCSE, yes, you need to know about insulin and glucagon, but you don't really need to know the intricate parts about it. Good, thank you. Thank you for the feedback. That's really good to know. But the key thing about a coordination center is something that's going to receive and process the information from those receptors. And then what's going to happen is they're going to send the information to effectors. And the effectors are the ones that are going to respond to whatever needs to happen to bring about that change. So at GCSE, you need to know about the muscles and the fact that muscles can contract. For the glands, you need to know that they're going to either secrete enzymes or secrete hormones. So we need to understand how homeostasis actually happens, and to do that, we need to look at the endocrine system. So the endocrine system is composed of these glands, and it's going to secrete hormones, which are chemicals. So your cells are going to produce chemicals that they're going to release from these glands, but what's going to happen is those glands are not going to be in the same location as the target organ or cell. So the pituitary gland is what we call the master gland. So the pituitary gland is this master gland which is located up in the brain. Now it's going to secrete several different hormones, and where the hormones are going is into the bloodstream. Now, they are going to go into the blood in response to body conditions. So what other endocrine system glands do you need to know of? Well, for GCSE, you have to be able to label the diagram if they give it to you. And they love giving you a diagram that says A, B, C, D, E, F. Which one of these does this, that, or the other? So you not only need to know where the position of the pituitary gland, that master gland, is, you also need to know about the thyroid gland. You also need to know about the adrenal gland. You also need to know about the ovaries and the testes. So whether they are female XX and have ovaries, or whether they are male XY and have testes, that is something you have to know for GCSE. So you have to be able to label the organs where the glands are found. So we have got these endocrine system. It's a system because it's going to have these glands that are going to secrete these chemical messengers, these hormones, and those hormones are going to transfer through the bloodstream until they get to the target organ, the target cells. So the other one that I did mention earlier is the pancreas. So the pancreas is a really important one when we are controlling our blood sugar levels. But let's take a step back and remind yourself about that master gland. So the pituitary gland is a master gland. It's going to secrete the hormones. And those hormones, as you can see here, there's quite a few hormones. So at GCSE, you need to know things like LH, luteinizing hormone. You need to know about FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. You need to know about ADH, antidiuretic hormone. So these hormones are all secreted from the pituitary gland. Sorry, my question was outside from this topic. Did you do stream on plan? And if you do, when? So I did do photosynthesis, not last week, but the week before. So 2 weeks ago on the Monday, but if you go to my live streams, you'll see on there the one that I did on photosynthesis. So these hormones are released from a gland, they go in the bloodstream, and then the blood, because of our heart, is pumping and moving them around the body. And when they are going to get to what's known as a target cell, what will happen is they will then bind to receptors in these glands, and that will produce a response. So it is important when we talk about the hormonal system and we talk about our way in which our body responds, is knowing that we have hormones that are going to be released into the bloodstream. Our bloodstream moves them around, and only the target cells will have receptors that are going to be complementary to the hormones that have been released. So I mentioned FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, for example. So follicle stimulating hormone is a hormone that is released by the pituitary gland. It's going to make its way through the bloodstream, and when it gets to the ovaries, it's going to bind to receptors, and when it binds to receptors in the ovaries, that causes the follicles to grow and the eggs to mature inside. So the hormone that's been released is signaling when it binds to the cell for the response to happen within the target cell. So in the case of follicle stimulating hormone, we know that that is where our eggs are going to mature, and that egg maturing is going to therefore prepare for the release. Now, if it was luteinizing hormone that's being secreted from the pituitary gland, that's going to make its way through the bloodstream. When it gets the ovaries, when it binds, that will cause the egg to be released. So depending on the hormone, yes, Sarah, this is GCSE, depending on the hormone that you are being asked about, you should know where it comes from, you should know where it goes to, and you should know what the response is that it's going to do. So if, for example, there we go, Sarah, that's really kind of you. If I was talking about the LH, the egg has been released, or if I'm talking about the FSH, the follicle has grown and the egg is maturing, I could then turn around and say, well, the ovaries actually are endocrine glands that make their own hormones, because they make estrogen and progesterone. So again, these are more hormones that you should know about. And so one of the things I would say to you, oh, thank you. One of the things I would say to you is make sure you know all the different hormones that they could ask you about, and make sure you know what it is that they are going to cause happen within the different areas, okay? So that's one of the things I would say as you're going through this. Now, hormones are slower than the nerve impulses. So you are going to learn, if you haven't already done so, you should be way past this point by now, but you will learn about your nerves. You will learn about how your nerves are able to send the electrical impulses, and then when it reaches a synapse, there's a different kind of chemical, not a hormone, a neurotransmitter that is released. So if they're asking you to compare the two, you should know that they are releasing hormones. Hormones travel through the bloodstream. That's very slow because they are going to last for longer, and it's going to be a slow response. Whereas if it's the nervous system, it's instantaneous. We want that impulse to make its way down through our neurons. We want it to cross the synapse, really, really small gaps between the neurons, basically our way to filter out the wasted noise. So Goku Pak, you were saying, Goku, I don't even know what I'm saying here with your name. You were saying earlier about the noise that was really annoying, and hopefully it's been fixed now, you can't hear the buzzing. But one of the things that's really interesting is that noise that you were hearing that was annoying, our neurons have to deal with that noise all the time. There's so much noise going on. And if we were constantly responding to every single stimuli, it would just be exhausting. We wouldn't be able to actually function. So what our body does, which is really amazing, is our neurons have a way of filtering out low-level stimuli. By having these gaps, the synapses, it means that we can filter out those low-level annoying noises and only actually respond to the things that are needed to keep us surviving. And so one thing I would say is, as you're going through, the best thing about biology and why I love it so much is it's so interlinked. Like, so many students struggle because they go, oh, I'm learning about homeostasis, so I just have to think about this. No, you're learning about biology, and biology is the bigger picture. It's everywhere around you. And so if you can actually really focus on what it is that you are struggling with and learning, and work that bit out and see the bigger picture, biology just becomes so much easier. And if you're going on to study this at A level, this is literally the foundation that you need for that next stepping stone, because A level is rough, it's hard, but it's so much fun because you'll learn so much more about what it is that's actually going on. Every time we're building on that next layer. And if you go on to do university level biology, then the whole world gets blown open because you're like, whoa, what was that? That's like, they told me this and now they're telling me something else, because it's just so much going on and so fascinating. Anyway, I'll come back to what I want to talk about. So the pancreas. So we've got our master gland. Our master gland is going to be producing lots of these hormones that can go to lots of different target organs, and they will bind wherever a receptor is. For us to maintain, nice, mankind, you're absolutely right. For us to maintain our blood sugar levels, we need two hormones, insulin and glucagon. So if you are a foundation student, actually not even if you're a foundation student, if you're not doing the triple, you only have to know about the insulin. If you are doing the triple actually and higher, you have to know about glucagon. So make sure you know which level you're going to be assessed for, and make sure what you need to know and revise that. Don't make it too complicated, but at the same time, sometimes it helps to know a bit more. So I'm going to assume you're all doing it all, and you have to know it all, because if you go to A level, you have to know it all. So if I have high blood glucose concentration and it's detected by receptors in my pancreas, they are going to respond by secreting insulin into the bloodstream. So they have detected this high blood sugar levels, that insulin has been released into the bloodstream, and it's now moved somewhere else, and it is going to bind to receptors on those target cells, basically every cell in your body. Okay, now we talk about the liver in more detail because that's more interesting, but it is everywhere else it can bind. So what's going to happen is when the insulin binds the receptors, and for those of you who are doing A level, you'll notice I'm using my diagrams again, because what I'm trying to get you to see is you have a foundational knowledge. A level's taking it just that step further, so you know more about what's going on. But for GCSE level, that insulin is going to bind to the receptors. The glucose is then going to move from that bloodstream into the cells, and it is going to lower the blood sugar levels. So the glucose leaving the bloodstream, going into the cells, means that there is less glucose now in my blood. Oh, nice. Now, what's going to happen when that glucose gets inside? Well, we talked about it already, respiration. So glucose is needed for respiration. And one of the things that I would say is actually missing off my diagram here. So let me just add it in, because glucose is where we're going to have this breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen. And when we do that inside the mitochondria, we're going to end up with water and carbon dioxide, but also we're going to end up with what's called ATP molecules. You'll learn more about that. But if you're GCSE, you need to know that energy is released. Silly, I have seen your message, and I think that's absolutely awesome. So you had your Oxford Biology interview today. How cool. How did it go? Was it stressful or was it fun? Stressful at the time, hopefully fun afterwards when you go, actually, I do know some stuff and it was nice. Or stressful in the fact you're now second guessing every answer that you've given and worried that they're not going to accept you. The most part, but was nice discussing. Nice. That's the key thing. It's about having a discussion. So if you are GCSE and you are thinking about where you want to go, so Silly comes to my sessions for A level and had their Oxford Biology interview today, and enjoyed it, which is lovely. Discussing things, that's what it should be about. Oh, thank you. Mankind, I'm very grateful in what you have said. I hope I am a good teacher. I love teaching. I love teaching biology, and I focus on A level mainly, and I have done for a long time. Although I've taught it all, and I used to be director student progress for my school for those up to year 11. But then I kind of knuckled down on the A level side of things, and I realized a lot of my students who were coming through into A level didn't have good foundational skills in their biology. They had been spoon fed and learnt the content, and so they come to A level and it's a big leap and a big jump. And so I wanted to do these sessions so I can give back a little bit and show you where that goes to later on, and also help those of you who don't believe you can do GCSE or don't believe you can do A level, because you can. It's just about working at it and understanding what is needed. Oh, nice. Courtship behaviours. I love that when you learn about courtship behaviours and talking about how that could be. It's a weird one because did they talk about peacocks and the fact that if you think about survival of the fittest, I'm going to go on a bit of a divergent track here. What I want you to, because this is the thing about biology. Biology is about seeing the world, seeing all these things. And what I want to do is I want to show you guys how biology can be exciting and interesting. And you might not like it, and that's fine. It's not for you. But for me, I'm like, whoa, I love it. So courtship behaviours are really fascinating. I always talk about the one to do with spiders, because I love the thing of spiders, where they will actually headbutt to find their mate. So the female and the male will actually do like a headbutt dance, and they try and find their mate based on who does the best dance. And so different bird species, obviously, you're going to have different courtship behaviours. And one of the things that's really fascinating, I'll go back why I'm talking about this, is peacocks. If you think about peacocks and you think about how big, massive feathers and bright colours those peacocks are, that's awesome. But that doesn't allow them to camouflage themselves. So they're actually really visible to predators. So if they've survived and those bright colours have actually then been passed on, because we talk about the alleles being passed on to the next generation, that shows that the more brightly coloured they are, the more fitter in the natural selection side of things they actually seem. I love that. It's like people think that all the dull colors are like the best because they're more hidden away and all this stuff, but actually it's all of it added together. It's so cool and so fascinating. Most teachers in GCSE be like, just memorise but lack of understanding and harm. Yeah, I completely agree on that, Mankind. It's not that most teachers want to do that. It's that the time frame to teach you is so restricted and there's so much content that sometimes it is just a plough through. Oh, you'll get it in the end or you won't, but we'll try our best. And memorisation at GCSE does work. So it will get you to a grade 5. However, getting up to the 6, 7, 8 to the 9, you really have to understand it. Yeah, it's so cool. Oh, Silly, I'm really excited for you. I'm glad that you had a really nice interview today. I remember my interview at Cambridge being like, I was just kind of there as a joke, I felt. When I applied to Cambridge and they accepted me to interview, I didn't get any of the information that I needed to do the interview. And so when I rocked on up, they were like, oh, have you done this? Have you done this? And have you done this? And I was like, no, because I didn't get the information. But then I just kind of went, and it was me. I was like, blah, 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 blah. As I do now, as you see here, this is me. And they're either going to love me or they're going to hate me. I'm a bit like Marmite. I'm either a really good teacher for you or I'm not. Now, some students will see my teaching and go, oh, what is this? And run for the hills. And then actually they'll come back and they'll kind of dip their toe in again and dip their toe in again and be like, oh, actually, you do know what you're talking about. And I had a student in A level who did that, and I could feel and sense their strange feelings because they were like, what are you doing? Who are you? What do you do? By the end of being with me for a month, they were then like, oh my gosh, I love biology. This is awesome. And I was like, well, yeah, because when you are passionate and when you figure something out that you want to do, then your tribe will follow you wherever you want to go. And if you're not my tribe, then I wish you all the best. But that's for you. Anyway, I'm going to come back onto this because for those of you who are GCSE are like, stop talking, just teach me. So here it comes. What else can happen? Well, I talked about the liver earlier, and I talked about the fact that your cells are going to store. I'm not ignoring you, Lou. I apologize. I am teaching GCSE, so I answer the questions when I can. So I'm not ignoring you. I did see that you're 12. I saw that you're EQA, but I am doing GCSE at the moment. And I will be back at 9 o'clock for A level, but this is GCSE, just so you know. And one thing I would say to you, and I know it's easy when you're behind the screen and it's just a name that's maybe a nickname. What I would say to you is, remember, this is me giving up my time for free. So maybe consider how you respond to somebody. I wasn't ignoring you. I was just trying to get back to the conversation for those who want to learn. So I will pick up every now and again. I'll see a message, and when the moment is right, I will obviously respond. But at the same time, I will pull you up if you are maybe being a little bit disrespectful. And I don't think you mean it, so I'm not going to hold that against you. But I would say to you that do think about what you're doing. Can you pay for lessons? I'm not offering any GCSE lessons at the moment that are paid. My lessons that I do offer that are paid, I'll be finishing in about 10 minutes to set myself up for my group, are A-level lessons that I do. So at the moment, I don't have any GCSE lessons. I may in the future, but at the moment, no. Flashbacks to this from last year. Will, how are you? How are you? Well, this is not A-level though. This is GCSE, although the diagrams are the same because they're mine. Anyway, back to those of you. Thank you if you are still with me. Bear with me. I do go off in tangents sometimes, but I will always come back to where I was because I want you to have that knowledge. So one of the key things to note about this is, dental skill, amazing. Well, that's so cool. I'll come back and speak to you in a minute. When you have the liver and that insulin has bound to the receptors, that has called the glucose has gone into the cell. The glucose is either going to be used in respiration or it's going to be stored as glycogen. And that's important because we need the glucose not to be in our bloodstream anymore. So we need that insulin to be released. But if you're type 1 diabetic, those pancreatic cells cannot produce enough insulin. So if your pancreatic cells cannot produce enough insulin, your blood sugar levels are going to start to rise. Well, those blood sugar levels are going to start to rise, affecting your water potential. That's the problem. So you'll end up with this high blood sugar concentration. Now, naturally, remember what I said, there is a limit. You've got a lower limit, you've got a higher limit, and it's between the two that you want it to be. Now, this was 2 hours after I'd eaten a meal. Me being me, I bought myself a blood sugar monitor, a biosensor. I pricked my finger as I ate my food. I pricked my finger 2 hours later. I pricked it another 2 hours later, and I checked my blood sugar levels. And one of the things that you should know is if you are type 1 diabetic, normally this is early onset. So this is normally a genetic issue where your immune system actually attacks your own cells. And because it attacks your own cells, it means that they're not able to produce enough insulin for the body. For some people, it's not early onset. So my uncle got it because he had a viral infection that then resulted in him with type 1 diabetes. Now, if you are type 1 diabetic, you will need to inject insulin 2 to 4 times a day. Nowadays, we've progressed so much and advanced so much. It's amazing. So when I first started teaching, I've taught many students who are diabetic, and I would see them. They would have the little bit that pricks your finger, which is actually really quite painful. So I feel for you. 1, you're pricking your finger to take a sample of your blood. 2, you're actually opening up your body. It's a small prick, so it's not as big an issue, but you are obviously going to be opening your blood vessels, allowing blood to come out. That is a risk for pathogens to get in. So a whole different topic area we could talk about. But you prick your finger and then you would put it on the little sensor end, and that would use capillary action to suck up your blood. That sample of your blood would go into the machine, and then they would use the chemicals inside to detect your blood sugar levels. Well, now you actually get machines. So when I was head of the house that I was head of, when I first started being head of house, there was a girl who was diabetic, type 1 diabetic, who was very early on in the trials of the machine that monitored the blood sugar levels. Now that we're talking a good maybe 9 years ago now. Now the advancement is you'll see people who have potentially, if they are diabetic, they have these monitors and sensors actually attached to their skin, and that sends a signal so that they can constantly monitor their blood sugar levels, because it's very vital that they do, because if they have too much glucose, that's a bad thing. If they have too little glucose, that's also a bad thing, because we have this very narrow limit we want to keep our blood sugar levels at. So, let me just go back a second. So if we are injecting the insulin because it's not being produced, it will then be able to bind to the receptors in the cells so that they can respond. For example, increase the uptake of glucose, increase the conversion to glycogen, increase the cellular respiration. So if you are type 2 diabetic, that is where your body cells aren't responding to the insulin. So it's not that you're not producing the insulin, you're still producing it, your body's not responding to it now. So because your body doesn't respond to the insulin, you are at a higher risk factor of things like obesity. How do you treat it? Well, glucose is a carbohydrate. So if you're going to try to lower your blood sugar levels because you're not able to utilize them, store them, remove them from the bloodstream, you are therefore going to try to lower that carbohydrate intake in your diet. And also, if you're doing regular exercise, because you're doing more exercise, your muscles are contracting more, they're going to need more energy for those contractions, and therefore you are going to have an increase in the cellular respiration. So because you've got an increase in cellular respiration, they're going to be using the glucose that is in the bloodstream. So someone who's type 2 has to treat the problem that they have not by injecting the insulin, because if they inject the insulin, they would then remove it into the bloodstream. But actually that's not the problem, because even by injecting it, the insulin's got nowhere to bind to. Because it's got nowhere to bind to, because they're not responsive to the insulin, nothing's going to happen. So it's really important you know the difference between the two. Now, glucagon is the other hormone you have to know about. So a low blood glucose concentration is detected by receptors, again in the pancreas. They respond by secreting this glucagon, and I always use that as glucose agon. So glucagon, do not get confused with glycogen. If you write the wrong thing in your exam, you will lose the marking point. So glucagon, glucose agon. That's how I always use it as a way of reminding even my A-level students. This is all the same stuff. It's about the detail you have to go into. So if I'm going to secrete glucagon from my pancreas, that is going to travel in my bloodstream. It will then bind to receptors on the liver cells. That is going to cause the liver to convert glycogen back into glucose. Now, did you see what I said there? Because I almost did the same thing that students do. Glucagon causes the glycogen to be converted into glucose. No, it doesn't. Glucagon causes the liver cells to respond by converting glycogen into glucose. And this is the vital bits that you have to be careful on. So this is GCSE level, not A level. I will be back at 9 o'clock tonight to do a little bit on, A level after I've done my group tuition sessions. I will cover A level again at 9 o'clock. But I just want to finish. Perfect, Mankind, you're absolutely right. The glucose can then diffuse into the bloodstream, increasing the concentration. And that's the whole point of glucose, gone. Get out of the liver. Glucose, you are no longer wanted here. So that's how I remember it. You've got to find whatever works for you when you're trying to remember things. Now, I just want to finish on negative feedback, because if you're higher level, you need to understand negative feedback. And remember, this is all about these foundational skills that are going to help you. So negative feedback is where you have a stimulus. That stimulus is going to provoke a response which will restore the balance. And it restores the balance by reducing the magnitude of the stimulus. So I have a stimulus that's detected by a receptor. I have a coordination center, which is going to coordinate the response. I have the effector that's going to carry out the response, and it will bring my system back to normal. So if the stimulus is an increase, the response would be to decrease. If the stimulus is a decrease, the response would be to increase. So if my temperature decreases, my body needs to respond to raise my temperature. If my temperature gets too high, my body needs to respond to lower my temperature. If my blood sugar levels get too high, my body needs to respond to bring them back down. If my blood sugar levels get too low, my body has to respond to bring them back up. So when we look at blood sugar levels, what we know is this is the ideal level. It's never going to stay at that level. It's going to go up and down, up and down. So they may ask you to interpret a graph and to say what's going on. So the stimulus has gone up, the response has brought us down, but we go past the ideal level and then we respond again and we bring it back up. We go past it and we respond. So it's important that you note that negative feedback is this stimulus which is going to provoke a response which restores the balance. So the three you have to know for your GCSE are blood sugar levels, water concentration, and your temperature. So they're the three. Next week, I'll go into the thyroid gland and a bit more to do with the higher level side of things that you need to know. But thank you for those of you who have joined me. Bisma, I have a question. Will we be questioned about graphs in this chapter? Yes, they could give you a graph. They could ask you to describe the graph. They could ask you to explain the graph. So at GCSE, yes, absolutely, they will assess your skills on how you would describe what you see and how you would then explain what is happening when it comes to the increase. So the description would be the blood sugar levels are increasing and then decreasing and then increasing and decreasing. And I would have to use the scale along the x-axis to say it increases from this point to that point, it decreases from this point to that point. And so that would be my description. My explanation would be it's increasing and then insulin has been released. It is now decreasing because the cells are responding to the insulin, and then it would go on to the glucagon. So it's about using what's in front of you. Yes, this is GCSE level. Omar, if you've just come across my channel, please do check out Biology with Christine on my YouTube channel because the live has been recorded there for you. But there aren't in notes. Yeah, they do love it. So they love giving past paper questions on it because it's a way of assessing your ability to apply your knowledge. So you will have learn about the insulin, learn about the glucagon, but can you then put it into context? Can you look and draw a conclusion? So this is assessing your ability of being able to draw a conclusion. So that should be being taught to you all the way through whilst you're doing required practicals. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I have enjoyed working with you tonight. I will be back next week. I'm going to do this up until Christmas at least. And you are very welcome, mankind. Thank you, because your responses help me, one, to actually guide you, but also it makes it more enjoyable for me, because then I'm responding to my community, my tribe. So thank you. And guys, if you are looking for more GCSE, I do have some videos on playlists which are aimed at AQA. There's some chemistry ones there too for you. I'm going to slowly build up the resources. But as I say, I'm mainly for A level at the moment. But I wanted to help because I do feel like GCSE are struggling a bit. This would be worth tuition money. Oh, I know. Mankind, I know it's worth tuition money, but the way I see it is this right now is my way of giving back where I can. That's why I go live, because not everyone can afford tuition, and you're absolutely right. People do pay good money for this, and there are lots of good tutors out there. But I also feel that for some people, it's hard. But this is also kind of like a marketing tool for me too. So although you say like I am offering it for free, next year if you choose to do A level, then obviously I will be there for you for tuition. But I want to make it so my daughters, when they get to GCSE, have resources that I know are good quality. I know will get them up to that 9 grades. I've worked with students for over 20 years. I've been trained at Cambridge. I know what I'm doing. And although I'm no longer in the physical classroom, I want to still be able to give back. And so that's why I do what I do. And I love it. I absolutely love this. And so it's... yeah, my daughters are 5 and 6, although they're learning biology as they go. But yeah, I do. I think about the future and the future that they've got. And I also want to help the teachers that are out there, because when I was training, when I was first in this job, I didn't know very much. I really didn't. And I learned through the experienced teachers that were able to guide me and help me. And so I hope that I'm able to help some teachers out there too. I've done a lot of training with teachers, and sometimes you just need a quick recap. We go on holiday ourselves over the summer and we come back feeling imposter syndrome. We can't remember anything. We just need a quick video to remind us, oh yeah, that's what I was teaching, and then we're off. So this isn't just for you, this is also for them, because I know how hard this job can be. Anyway, I really must go because I have my group tuition, which does pay me. And so therefore I need to go and do that. So thank you guys. If you are A level, please do come back at 9 o'clock. I will be back at 9 o'clock to do a bit more. So thanks guys.